I walked into my daughter's wedding proud and ready to give her away. 5 minutes later, I was back in my car, heart pounding, because her new husband leaned in, smiled, and told me, "You're a stain on this family's name." I didn't cause a scene. I didn't scream. I just walked out, quiet, dignified. And hours later, after the ceremony, after the photos, after the first dance, my phone lit up with a message from her. "Why did you ruin my wedding?" That's when I knew. They never wanted me there to begin with. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you're watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. They say the father of the bride is supposed to beam with pride, to wear a quiet smile, and let his eyes glisten with unshed tears as he watches his little girl start a new chapter. And I did all of that. Or at least, I was ready to. My name's Richard, Rich to my friends, and I was ready to show up, stand tall, and hand my daughter over with grace. That morning, I'd shaved twice just to get the line of my beard right. Pressed my suit 3 times before deciding on the navy one with the subtle herringbone pattern, the same one I wore to her high school graduation. I even bought new cufflinks. Silver. Clean. Quiet. I thought I was doing everything right. But pride's a funny thing. It can get you dressed to the nines and walking into a room full of strangers, only to get gutted by a few quiet words no one else hears. The venue was stunning. A converted vineyard with exposed beams and soft, golden string lights like fireflies frozen mid-flight. I walked in alone, holding the envelope with my gift in one hand, the other hand twitching at my side like it was still supposed to be holding hers. She used to clutch my pinky finger when she was small, like it was a lifeline. I smiled at that memory. I was ready to see her. My heart was bouncing around in my chest like a kid on a trampoline. It wasn't nerves. It was joy. Straight up, chest-thumping joy. That lasted exactly 4 minutes. I had barely made it past the guest book table when he found me. David, the groom. My soon-to-be son-in-law, though I use the term now with about as much warmth as a stranger's handshake. He walked up, all polished charm and fake sincerity, and said, "Rich, hey, glad you could make it." His eyes were scanning the room even as he spoke. Then he leaned in close, lowering his voice to a level only I could hear. "Just so you know," he said, "you're a stain on this family's name. Try not to embarrass her today." I didn't blink. I didn't twitch. I just looked at him. Not up, not down. Eye to eye. Something in me twisted, like a knife in the ribs, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I did the only thing I could do in that moment. I smiled. A small, tight-lipped thing. Then I nodded once and said nothing. Not a word. I turned and walked out. No scene. No confrontation. Just a clean exit. But don't mistake silence for surrender. Out in the parking lot, the fall air hit me like a wall. Cool and dry, with that faint, sharp scent of crushed leaves underfoot. I stood there for a second, unsure whether I should get in my car or just scream into the sky. But I didn't do either. I just walked slowly toward my car, each step heavier than the last. Because walking away wasn't easy. It was the hardest damn thing I've ever done. You don't raise a child, especially not mostly on your own, just to be told that you're a stain. You don't tuck them in every night, or pick them up from middle school when they get their period early and don't know what to do, just to be erased like a smudge on someone's perfect wedding day. But apparently, somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of her story and started being an embarrassment. And if I was an embarrassment, then I figured I'd do her the favor of disappearing before she had to scrub me out herself. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, hands frozen on my lap. I didn't cry. Not then. I just kept replaying what he said. A stain. Like I was some shameful memory, some mark she couldn't scrub out of her new life. I kept thinking, what the hell did I do to deserve that? Because the truth is, I gave up everything for her. When her mom left, it wasn't some amicable divorce. No, it was fireworks and lawyers and lies. She moved out of state, found some new guy with a boat, and left me holding the bag and the baby. I raised Natalie. I packed her lunches, drove her to dance class, sat front row at every recital, and even learned how to braid her hair from YouTube tutorials. I was never perfect, but I showed up. Every damn day. I showed up when it was hard, when I was broke, when I was lonely, when she was angry at me just for existing during her teenage years. And now I wasn't even worth a seat at the reception. I scrolled through my phone. My thumb hovered over her name. Natalie. The same name I whispered the first time I held her in that tiny hospital room, swaddled and squirming and already too alert. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just stared at it like it was a wound. Eventually, I sent one text to my younger brother, Paul. Just left the wedding. Don't ask. Call me later. His reply was instant. What happened? You good? Want me to come get you? But I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I wasn't sure what the truth was. I wasn't good. But I didn't want anyone to come get me either. I just needed to sit with it. I watched guests drift past the windows of the venue like shadows. The music started up, soft piano at first, probably the walk down the aisle. That was supposed to be my moment, too. Walking her down, handing her off, maybe giving a short speech, something heartfelt. I even had one written, folded up in my pocket. I didn't read it. Couldn't. But I knew how it started. Natalie, I may not have given you everything you ever wanted in life, but I gave you everything I had. Turns out that wasn't enough. And here's the thing no one tells you about heartbreak. It doesn't always come from a breakup. Sometimes it's family. Sometimes it's the kid you swore you'd never stop loving. And sometimes it's a man you barely know looking you in the eye and telling you that your presence is the problem. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the ceremony to end, for the guests to head into the reception hall, for the sun to shift a little lower in the sky. I was about to drive off. Finally, mercifully, when my phone buzzed again. A call. From my niece. Paul's daughter, Jessica. I answered, figuring maybe Paul had asked her to check in. Uncle Rich, she said, voice hushed and breathless. Where are you? I hesitated. Home. What? She lowered her voice even more. Natalie's crying. That stopped me cold. She said you just left. Everyone's asking where you are. There's like a weird tension now. Her mom's being weirdly smug, and David's acting like nothing happened. Did something happen? I didn't answer right away. My voice caught in my throat, but I forced out, she'll be fine. Let her enjoy her day. Jessica didn't buy it. She doesn't look fine, Uncle Rich. She looked hurt, confused. Something's off. I just thought you should know. And then, just before hanging up, she added quietly, I saw him pull you aside. I was watching. He said something, didn't he? I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. I just ended the call with a quiet, thanks for telling me. But inside, the storm started to brew. Because as much as I tried to stay calm, I knew this wasn't over. The drive home felt like I was floating underwater, quiet, weightless, and numb. My hands gripped the wheel, but I wasn't really there. The road stretched out like a ribbon I didn't remember choosing. I didn't put music on. No talk radio. No distractions. Just the rhythmic hum of the tires and the occasional blink of a turn signal. All I could hear were his words echoing in my head like a bad song on repeat. A stain on the family's name. The nerve. The gall. The sheer disrespect. The longer I sat with it, the more it burned. Not just for what he said, but for how easily I took it. I hated myself for smiling. For being silent. For leaving without defending myself. Without even demanding an explanation from Natalie. But the moment he said it, I felt something snap inside me. Like a string pulled too tight for too long. And in that split second, I knew exactly who I was dealing with, and who she had become. I didn't cry on the way home. That came later. The tears didn't hit until I pulled into my driveway and saw the porch light flickering, still broken after last week's storm. That dumb light. I'd meant to fix it all week, and now it just sat there blinking like a weak, half-hearted apology. Inside, the house felt too big. Empty in a way that made me feel small, like a guest in my own life. I hung up my jacket, laid the envelope with Natalie's card gently on the kitchen counter, and sat down in the living room without turning on a single light. Just me and the dark. The silence wrapped around me like a second skin. I picked up my phone. Still no message from Natalie. Still no explanation. I wasn't sure if that hurt more, or if I was grateful she hadn't tried to spin it. Instead, my phone lit up with another message, from Paul. I just heard from Jess. You okay? I didn't respond right away. I poured myself a glass of bourbon, sat back in my worn leather chair, and stared at the ceiling. I finally typed. He called me a stain on the family name. told me not to embarrass her. So I left. Paul replied instantly. What the hell? Are you serious? Dead serious. Then he called. I let it ring once, twice, before picking up. Tell me exactly what he said, Paul demanded, his voice sharp with disbelief. I repeated it, word for word. There was a long pause on the other end. That little prick, he finally muttered. You should have knocked his damn teeth in. Yeah, I said, a bitter laugh slipping out. Then what? Get dragged out in cuffs during her wedding toast. Paul sighed. No, I get it. But still, you didn't deserve that. I didn't say anything. The silence on my end said enough. Then he asked the question I hadn't been able to face yet. You think she knew? I took a long sip. That's the part one can't stop thinking about. Because deep down, I wasn't sure which would hurt more, if he blindsided her too, or if she was in on it. If she stood by him, knowing full well the kind of disrespect he'd serve me at the door. And then it hit me. Jessica had said Natalie was crying, that she looked confused, hurt. But if that was true, why hadn't I heard from her? I sat with that question for hours. Later that night, after the bourbon had loosened my thoughts but sharpened the ache, I checked social media. Not to stalk, just to scroll. But then I saw it. A post from one of the guests. A short video. Just 5 seconds. Me walking out. My back to the camera, suit crisp, posture stiff, the string lights glowing behind me like a fairy tale backdrop gone wrong. The caption read, Father of the bride walks out right before the ceremony. What happened? It had over 600 views already. A few comments. Nothing vicious yet, but people were guessing, speculating. Some said it must have been drama with the ex-wife. Others said maybe it was nerves. One person even wrote, that man looked heartbroken. They weren't wrong. Another text lit up my screen. Not from Paul, not from Jessica. From her. Natalie, why did you leave? You ruined everything. That was it. No, are you okay? No, what happened? No hesitation. Just blame. I stared at her message for a long time before answering. Ask your husband what he said to me. There was a pause, 10 minutes maybe. Then came her reply. He told me. He was protecting me. I nearly dropped the phone. Protecting her? I wanted to scream. From what? From my presence? From my face? From the man who raised her? Who gave up everything to keep a roof over her head when her mother disappeared into a new marriage and a new life. That was when the tears finally came, not out of sadness, but out of something deeper. Anger, grief, a kind of betrayal that sits in your bones like rust. I didn't reply again. I couldn't. I just stood up and paced the house, heart pounding, fists clenched. I wanted to call her, to demand answers. But what would it matter? She'd already picked a side. She already let that man speak for her. Hours passed. At some point, I fell asleep in my chair. The next morning, I woke up to more messages. This time from Jessica. Uncle Rich, you need to see this. She sent a screenshot of a group chat. Extended family. Natalie's side. People were asking why I left. Someone, likely my ex-wife, claimed I had been drinking, that I stormed off in a fit. That was the narrative being fed now. I called Jessica. Don't believe it, I said before she could even say hello. I don't, she replied quickly. But people are talking. Aunt Sarah, she said she always knew you'd make it about yourself. That one stung. I laughed bitterly. Making it about myself? I left to avoid making it about me. I left so she could have her perfect day without the stain. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that stuck with me. I think you did the right thing, Uncle Rich. But I also think people aren't going to stop twisting it just because you walked away. She was right. Walking away didn't preserve anything. It just gave people room to write their own version of the story. And in that moment, I realized something. Silence can be graceful, but it can also be dangerous. Especially in a family that's too quick to fill the gaps with gossip and too slow to ask the real questions. By the end of the day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for Natalie's understanding. I wasn't going to fight to sit at a table where my presence was treated like poison. But I also wasn't going to let the lie live unchecked. This story wasn't over yet. By Monday morning, the video had made its rounds. Not viral, but enough to matter. Enough to sting. A few hundred more views. A handful of comments from strangers who didn't know me from Adam. Most were harmless. Curious. But one caught me off guard. Groom pulled a power move. Old man couldn't handle it. I read it 3 times. Power move? What kind of man takes his wedding day, his wife's wedding day, and uses it as a stage to humiliate her father? What kind of twisted performance was that? I clicked the profile. Blank. No photo. Probably one of his friends. Or worse, someone in the family hiding behind a burner account. And for the first time, I felt something shift in me. I'd spent years swallowing pride for the sake of peace. For Natalie, letting people write me off as the quiet one, the emotional one, the guy who let the divorce ruin him. But there's a line between keeping the peace and becoming the scapegoat. And that line had been trampled. I poured myself a black coffee, no sugar, not today, and sat down at the kitchen table with my phone. The house was dead quiet. I stared at Natalie's last message. He was protecting me. I read it over and over, trying to squeeze meaning from it. Protecting her from what? Me? The man who worked overtime so she could get braces? Who sold his motorcycle, my one selfish thing, so she could go on the senior trip to Italy? But then another thought crept in, slow and sour. Maybe it wasn't just about the wedding. Maybe it was years in the making. Maybe she'd started to believe the whispers, her mom's version of things. How I struggled after the divorce. How I wasn't emotionally available. Code words. Polite insults. A slow poison that turns a daughter against her father one drop at a time. I opened a new message, typed out, "What exactly did he protect you from, Natalie?" And then I deleted it. Not because it wasn't fair, but because it didn't matter. I didn't want clarity anymore. I wanted truth. And she'd show me hers. Silence. Blame. Complicity. That afternoon, Paul came over. He didn't knock. Just walked in, like we were back in high school sneaking beers into Dad's basement. "You're trending in our family group chat," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. "Mom's pissed. Says you embarrassed the family name." Funny how she's echoing David's words, huh? Always did love the sound of someone else's voice in her mouth, I muttered. He laughed, dry and humorless. "You want a drink? It's noon." He grabbed 2 beers anyway. We sat outside, sun spilling across the deck like nothing had happened, as if the weekend hadn't detonated the entire foundation of my relationship with my daughter. Paul leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "I heard a rumor," he said carefully. "Don't know if it's true, but I think you should know." I turned to him, already bracing. "Mom said Susan, your ex, only agreed to help pay for the wedding if you didn't give a speech." My stomach dropped. "You're kidding," I said flatly. He shook his head. "Nope. Apparently, David brought it up during the planning stages. Told Natalie it was for the best, less drama, less chance of you making it about you." Jesus Christ, I breathed. I sat back, stunned. All that time I thought I'd been invited to share the day. Turns out, I was just another liability to be managed. Paul looked at me, brows furrowed. "Rich, did you even know she was making a speech?" "No," I said. "I didn't. I just assumed, father of the bride, you know." He nodded slowly. "That's because you're decent. You assume the best. They didn't." We sat in silence, both of us drinking in the full weight of it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded note. The speech I never got to give. I handed it to him. He read it quietly. His jaw tightened by the end. "This would have leveled the room," he said. "In a good way." I nodded. "Guess we'll never know." He looked at me. "You thinking of telling your side?" I didn't answer right away, but something had changed in me. I could feel it in my bones. That urge to protect her feelings above my own, gone. Replaced by something colder. Clearer. A desire to reclaim the story. My story. That night, I posted my own message. Not to the world. Not to the internet. Just to the family group chat. I didn't walk out to ruin Natalie's day. I walked out because her husband called me a stain on the family name before she even walked down the aisle. I said nothing. I caused no scene. But I will not sit quietly while lies get passed around as truth. If you think my silence was weakness, let this be your correction. No emojis. No pleasantries. Just fact. The fallout came quickly. A cousin messaged privately. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. That's disgusting." An aunt replied. "Maybe he misspoke?" To which I responded, "No. He was clear." And I was silent. But not anymore. By morning, the chat had splintered. Some backed me. Others avoided the topic entirely. Natalie, still silent. Until Wednesday. Her name lit up on my phone again. A voice message this time. That alone was new. I hesitated before hitting play. Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying, but there was steel beneath it. I didn't know he said that to you. He told me later, but only after I texted you. He said you took it the wrong way, that he meant it as a joke. I don't know what to believe anymore. I wish you hadn't left. I stared at the screen. A joke? There's no version of those words that come off as a joke. And deep down, I think she knew that. But it was easier to play the middle than to face what marrying him really meant. I recorded my own voice message. You want the truth? I didn't leave because of what he said. I left because you let it stand. Because when I told you, you didn't call him out. You defended it. You made your choice. And I'm making mine. I didn't know if she'd respond. But I knew this. I wasn't going to be a punching bag in my own family's narrative. She'd married into a family that saw me as a blemish. She could choose to see me differently, but I wouldn't spend another day begging for the benefit of the doubt. Not when I'd already given everything I had. It started with a wedding guest, someone I didn't know. A friend of David's, maybe, or a +1 looking for attention. They posted a longer video on TikTok. Not just the 5 seconds of me walking out, but the minute leading up to it. You could see him lean in, his face calm, his lips moving. You couldn't hear what he said, but you could feel the tension shift. My body stiffened, jaw clenched, eyes gone hard. Then you saw me smile, just barely, and walk away like I was stepping off a battlefield. The caption read, "When the father of the bride walks out before the ceremony, there's a reason. Watch the groom's face." It had 38,000 views by Thursday afternoon. By that evening, 110,000. Strangers in the comments were calling it disrespectful, chilling, a power move gone wrong. Someone slowed the video down and zoomed in on David's mouth. One lip reader claimed he said exactly what I heard. "You're a stain on this family's name." That post had over 1,000 comments alone. And suddenly, it wasn't just a family drama. It was a public spectacle. I found out from Paul. Again. "Rich," he said, barely containing himself, "you're on TikTok." My stomach dropped. "What?" He sent the link. I watched it once, then again, and then I just sat there, stunned. Because for the first time, other people saw it too. Not just what he said, though that was still debatable in the video, but my reaction. How composed I was. How quiet. How crushed. There's something horrifying about seeing yourself like that. Not through your own eyes, but through the lens of someone else. I looked older than I felt. Smaller. Sadder. But somehow stronger too. There was dignity in the walk, even if I didn't feel it at the time. And then came Natalie. She called. Not a text. Not a voicemail. An actual call. I let it ring halfway through before answering. Her voice was tight. Controlled. "Can you help me take the video down?" No hello. No apology. Just that. I exhaled sharply, already knowing where this was going. "I didn't post it." "I know," she said. "But it's hurting people." "Me. David. People at work have seen it." I paused. "What exactly do you want me to do?" "I don't know. Issue a statement? Clarify what really happened so people stop assuming things." I nearly laughed. "Oh, now the assumptions matter?" I said. "You didn't care when the family chat was saying I stormed off drunk. You didn't care when your husband told people I was emotionally unstable. But now that strangers are holding him accountable, suddenly we need clarity?" She fell silent. "I just wanted to stop," she finally said. Her voice cracked. Barely, but I caught it. "This is ruining everything." "No," I said, voice low, steady, certain. "He ruined everything." I just walked away. "You could have stayed," she said. I closed my eyes. "Don't do that. Don't put this on me. You knew how he spoke to me. You chose to marry him anyway. And when I told you, you didn't defend me. You defended him." Another long pause. Then, softer, "I didn't know how to handle it." "You handle it," I said, "by telling the truth. That's all I've ever done. You want me to help you fix your public image? Fine. But I won't lie. Not to save face. Not for anyone." We hung up not long after. No resolution. Just a truce wrapped in exhaustion. Later that night, Paul called again. "Bro, you're not gonna believe this." I was already bracing. "What now?" "There's a podcast episode." "Eh, what?" He laughed. "Swear to God." Some relationship podcast picked up the TikTok. They're doing a breakdown, calling it Red Flag Wedding. I groaned. Jesus. But I listened. I couldn't help it. The host, a sharp, no-nonsense woman, summed it up better than anyone else had. If your groom is insulting your father 5 minutes before you walk down the aisle, and your response is to blame your dad for leaving, sweetheart, the marriage isn't starting with love. It's starting with control. It was brutal, honest, and it hit me harder than I expected. Not because I needed validation, but because, for once, someone said it out loud. This wasn't about one insult. This was about years of quiet discrediting. About a man who couldn't stand the fact that his wife loved another man first, her father. And about a daughter too afraid, or too conditioned, to challenge that. But not everyone was sympathetic. The DMs started next. Some anonymous accounts accused me of playing victim. Others said I should have stayed for her sake, no matter what. That real fathers don't walk away. But then came one message I'll never forget. It was from a stranger, middle-aged, maybe. No profile picture. Just a single sentence. I left my daughter's wedding too. You're not alone. That one broke me. I put the phone down and cried like I hadn't in years. Not the silent kind. Not the cinematic, single tear down the cheek kind. Ugly, chest-heaving sobs. Because I realized I wasn't alone. And for the first time, it felt like the world had shifted just enough to make space for my pain. And that's when it hit me. Maybe this wasn't about reclaiming the narrative. Maybe it was about releasing it. Letting people know that fathers get hurt too. That showing up for your kid doesn't guarantee you a permanent place in their life. That sometimes love gets rewritten by new loyalties, and the only thing you can do is step aside with your dignity intact. I didn't take the video down. I didn't comment. I didn't explain. But I printed out one of the comments and pinned it to the fridge. That man walked away with more class than anyone in that room. And every morning since, I've read it while pouring my coffee. Not because I need strangers to affirm my worth, but because in a house that once echoed with bedtime stories and teenage tantrums, that small piece of paper reminds me. I didn't lose a daughter that day. I let go of someone who didn't see me clearly anymore. She asked to meet at a small cafe halfway between our homes. Neutral ground. Public. Probably her way of making sure things didn't get messy. Not that I ever raised my voice to her, even once. But when someone's already rewritten your character, they start preparing for scenes that only exist in their imagination. I got there 10 minutes early. Old habit. Show up early. Be ready. Never let them say you kept them waiting. That's what I used to tell her when she was in high school, back when I was still teaching her how to drive and how to read people. Watch how someone treats the waiter, I used to say. Tells you everything. She walked in exactly on time. Hair pulled back, sunglasses tucked into the collar of her sweater. Her wedding ring caught the light like it had something to prove. She looked older than the last time I saw her, but maybe that was just me. Maybe it was knowing too much now. She sat down without a smile. I didn't offer one either. The waitress came by. We both ordered coffee. Black for me. Oat milk and cinnamon for her. Same as always. Funny how some things don't change even when everything else has. She looked at me, lips pressed together like she was still deciding whether this was a conversation or a trial. So, she said, you walked out of my wedding. I took a breath. Held it. Let it out slow. No, I said. Your husband pushed me out. I just left before I embarrassed you further. She blinked, clearly not expecting me to come in that direct. Good. I was done softening the edges for her comfort. You could have told someone, she said. Told me. Instead of leaving like that. I did, I said calmly. I texted you. You said he was protecting you. That was your answer. She looked down at her coffee, fingers trembling just enough for me to notice. He told me you were acting hostile, she said. That you came in angry, looking for a fight. I nodded slowly, the way you do when someone you love lies to your face and expects you to smile through it. Did I look angry in that video, Natalie? She winced. I saw it, she admitted. Everyone has. Good, I said. Then you know? I didn't come in angry. I came in proud. Nervous, maybe. Emotional. But happy. Until he said what he said. She didn't argue. She couldn't. Not anymore. You didn't even fight back, she whispered. Would it have mattered? I asked. She looked at me then. Really looked. And for a second, just a second, I saw something shift